Before beginning to define what the word consciousness means, I would like to present the views of some of the most renowned philosophers and scientists regarding what it signifies, or rather, the notion they hold of such a word called consciousness.
Do you think we will ever figure out what consciousness really is?
Possibly, but just because we have a word for it doesn't mean it's a thing in need of being described. Okay? In that way. So, for example, maybe consciousness is not a real thing. It's some combination of other things that we haven't thought of yet. So because we can't even agree on what consciousness is, for me, is evidence that maybe it does not exist as in any way that we want it to or think it should. I just would leave that option open. Because the history of science is one where if you think something is or should be a certain way, there's no obligation of nature to ensure that it is.
With keenness of attention, you decipher what is true, what is untrue, what is the nature of existence, what is made up in your mind. This distinction you must make. Spiritual process means you clearly disentangle from all the things that you made up. If you disentangle or at least create a little space between all that you have made up, then spiritual process is a natural process. There is no other way to live. So we're discounting the impact of consciousness, the impact of human emotions, human thought, the atmospheres we create. So none of that is relevant, just manipulate genetics.
Destructive dilemma is a type of logic that looks at things to see if they're identical or different. And often what's looked at are two things here, something and its basis. So for example, if we look at the self and we compare it to its basis, which is the mind and the body, or if we expand that, we get the five so-called aggregates, the five skandhas. One is form, which is the body, and the other four are different aspects of consciousness or the mind. So again, if we collapse it, we get the mind and the body and the mind is the basis for me, Barry, the self.
A plant, I think, would have maybe 10 units of consciousness. It analyzes sunlight, water, temperature. That's the consciousness of a plant. An alligator may have, I think, several hundred units of consciousness because they have to find the prey. They have to have a three-dimensional representation of reality. And the monkey brain is the brain of social networks. That is hierarchies. Who's your friend? Who's your enemy? Who's your ally? That, all the way starting from a thermostat, going up to a plant, going up to an alligator, going up to a monkey. Where are we on this consciousness scale? I think our consciousness is the prefrontal cortex. What am I going to do tomorrow? What the hell am I doing here, right? You're thinking about the future.
Perhaps the most noteworthy takeaway is that they urge people, in a certain sense, to be willing to listen to new ways of thinking. They do not actually know what it means. They lack a clear concept of it. They lack critical thinking skills. They merely ramble aimlessly. This is because they lack relevant information about the human brain that would allow them to have a clearer notion of the subject. One of the most important things you must understand is that we do not have real scientists today. Consequently, in the end, the people who listen to them leave exactly as they arrived. They learn nothing significant or relevant. So, people do not know what is relevant to our society or what is really needed. Okay, now, in this country, there are people who claim to belong to a group they call the High Consciousness Club. Based on my own understanding of the word consciousness, that sounds wonderful. So, to verify whether they truly understand what they are talking about, I ask them, high consciousness? What do you mean by that? And they reply, high consciousness. Yes, but what is high consciousness? High consciousness, connecting with the universe. Okay, Let me see if I understand. May I ask you a few questions? Sure, of course. Go ahead. So, I ask them the following questions. What is my blood pressure? How fast is the blood flowing through my arteries and veins? I don't know. How would I know? I need an instrument. Okay, I understand. Now basically, what is a protein? They answer, chicken and meat are protein. That does not demonstrate knowledge. Proteins are present in all living things. If they answer that, a protein is a chain of amino acids. That demonstrates knowledge. Okay, now, right here, in this very place, there are viruses, germs, and bacteria. Can you see them with the naked eye? No, of course not. I need a microscope. Right. Now, what should I do if the building I live in catches fire and the smoke makes it impossible for me to breathe? I don't know. So, people use words that they don't really know what it means. It is just like a person with no interest in the anatomy of living things looking at a tree. They cannot truly see the tree. Oh, perhaps your eyesight is sharper, and you might see the tree more clearly than the plant anatomy expert. But he or she knows what to look for in that tree. In other words, he or she can see many things that you cannot. They have a more advanced way of thinking, but the primitive man simply looks at the tree and smiles. He has no curiosity. He looks at the world through his primitive tools, with his primitive thinking. Do you understand? The more you know about how things work in the world around you, the more conscious you are. We cannot see things as they really are, only as our receptors. You cannot see a bacterium with the naked eye, but with a microscope, you can. You can even see it wagging its little tail. So, you cannot be conscious unless you have instruments which serve as extensions of our external receptors to sense things that the other way you can't sense. That's why human beings build instruments that serve as an extension of their receptors if they want to better understand how the world around them works. Microscope, telescope, altimeter, thermometer, telephone, etc. So we can only see things depending on the quality of our receptors and the information we receive from our environment. Therefore, you cannot be conscious. You can learn to be more conscious. Currently, there are a lot of things we still don't know. There's no such stupidity called a gifted person. It has no relation to how the real world works. So how can parents claim to love their children if they lie to them? They hurt and damage children's brains in many different ways. Clearly, because they are sincerely ignorant. Just in case, remember, about 99% of our beliefs are unreal, lies, pure misinformation that prevents us from achieving a better world for future generations. We are so misinformed. Zero critical thinking. In other words, we live in a world of pure crap. I hate to disappoint you by not saying the things you would like to hear, but misinform or lie to people is not my position because it hurts people. Remember, we don't need good, honest, kind, or sincere people. What we really need are people with knowledge. I know there are many people hungry for knowledge, who wants to learn how to use their brains more intelligently. Remember, we are born with no knowledge imprinted on our brain's memory. Information doesn't come from space and enter your head. The more relevant information you expose yourself to, the more consciousness you are. A brain with relevant information is like a charged battery. If you go and buy a battery with no electrical charge and take it home, that basically means you're taking it home for nothing. So, if you ask people what the word consciousness means, they don't know. Now we know, so we can make people more conscious. If you find this information useful and would like to support my work, you can buy me a virtual coffee on the content creator platform, Buy Me a Coffee. In exchange, you will get access to the video I already uploaded to the platform, where I talk specifically about the human brain, why the environment is everything. And of course, you will have access to future videos I'll be uploading to the platform focused on helping parents raise smarter children. Because the smarter your children are, the better your life will be. Believe me, a child is the best asset you can have. But unfortunately, the vast majority of parents lack the knowledge on how to raise children intelligently. In the description of this video, I've included the link to the platform. I hope it's now easier for you to understand why I recommend you subscribe to my channel, so you're notified every time I upload a new video. And don't forget to like the video if you identify with this way of thinking. Thank you.